So what voter ID laws are racist?
Apologies, Mr. Cruz, your state of Texas, perhaps?
Okay, so you think the entire state of Texas is racist. What about requiring an ID to vote is racist?
So I think, sir, that's pretty reductive. I'm not saying the entire state of Texas is racist.
You just said my state of Texas, so you tell me,
Your
what
voter
about
I-
the Texas voter ID laws is
absolutely.
racist?
So the fact that the voter ID law was put into place to diminish the political power of Latinos with racist intent and had been found to have
You're
racist
asserting that.
intent.
What's your evidence for that?
The federal district court that first resolved the constitutionality of Texas's voter ID law.
Okay, so your view is voter ID laws are racist. How about, in your judgment, are voter ID laws racist? Professor Tolson.
Thank you for that question. So it depends. One thing we have to stop doing is treating all voter ID laws as the same.
Okay, so your answer, I want to move quickly, so it depends is your answer?
Yes, that's my answer.
Okay, so what voter ID laws are racist?
Fellow patriots, welcome back to Liberty Trigger. Today we're talking about a fiery Senate hearing where Senator Ted Cruz put the radical left's narrative about voter ID laws to the ultimate test and exposed it for the fraud that it is. Cruz asked one question, just one: are voter ID laws racist? And what did the Democrats' witnesses do? They squirmed. They stuttered. They dodged. One professor even said, well, it depends, and then had the nerve to single out Texas. My Texas. She claimed voter ID laws were designed to suppress Latino political power. But when Cruz pressed her for actual evidence, she had nothing but a court ruling and vague accusations.
Apologies, Mr. Cruz, your state of Texas, perhaps?
Okay, so you think the entire state of Texas is racist. What about requiring an ID to vote is racist?
So I think, sir, that's pretty reductive. I'm not saying the entire state of Texas is racist.
You just said my state of Texas, so you tell me,
Your
what
voter
about
I-
the Texas voter ID laws is
absolutely.
racist?
So the fact that the voter ID law was put into place to diminish the political power of Latinos with racist intent and had been found to have
You're
racist
asserting that.
intent.
What's your evidence for that?
The federal district court that first resolved the constitutionality of Texas's voter ID law.
Okay, so your view is voter ID laws are racist. How about you, Mr. Yang?
I agree with Professor Tolson. Voter ID laws can be racist.
Okay,
Depends
that's
on the
two.
context.
Mr. Science?
There are some voter ID laws that are racially discriminatory in intent.
How about in practice? In intent, fine, you say there's some racist with a malevolent intent lurking in the back of their mind. But let's just talk about it as a practical matter. When I go to vote, they ask me for my ID. I pull out my ID, I show it to them, I vote. Is that racist?
If the law that requires you to do that was motivated by racially discriminatory intent
What about the
under
effect?
our
Set
Constitution.
aside intent. Set aside intent. I'm asking about the effect.
Yes, in effect, I
Okay,
think that
Ms.
there are
Reardon.
discriminatory effects from a number of voter ID laws.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reardon.
I'm going to give the witness a chance to answer the question. Go ahead, Mr. Sine.
Yes, in effects, I think many voter ID laws are discriminatory. And in design, they are designed to have that effect.
Okay, Ms. Reardon.
No, sir.
Mr. Van Spakovsky.
No, particularly because every single state that has passed an ID law has put in a provision to provide a free ID to anyone who doesn't have one. The turnout numbers show it has no effect, and I would remind everyone that the current version of the Texas voter ID law for in-person voting, the Obama administration agreed in court, in a court filing, that they were satisfied with it and that it was not discriminatory.
You know, I have to say this range of question actually shows the wildly partisan nature of the Democrats' proposal. The record should reflect all three of the Democratic witnesses invited by the chairman maintained to this committee that voter ID laws can be, in many instances, in most instances, I think of the various ways they formulated, are racist. So let me tell you who disagrees with that. 35 states across the country disagree with that because 35 states have voter ID laws in effect. But not just 35 states. 81% of voters in America disagree with the radical views proposed by the Democrats and the Democratic witnesses. Not just 81% of Americans. 77% of black voters in America support voter ID laws. Sadly, too many Democrats today don't want to protect the integrity of elections. And I've got to say there is a view, particularly from Northeastern Democrats, that they look down on the rest of the country as a bunch of bigots and overalls, their Southern cousins who are too oafish to be as enlightened as they are. And I have to say there's an incredible hypocrisy in that states like Georgia and Mississippi have a higher black voter registration rate than states like Connecticut, the chairman's home state. They have higher black voter turnout rates than states like Connecticut. They have a lower gap between black and white turnout than in states like Senator Blumenthal's Connecticut. And in fact, states like Georgia and Mississippi, African Americans vote at a higher rate than white voters, and in Texas, they're basically equal. One of the sad realities of today's Democratic Party is they define race as follows. If you're a Democrat, you qualify. So under the Democratic view, I'm not Hispanic. Senator Padilla is. If you're a Democrat, you're an Hispanic. My abuelo and abuela would be very surprised to discover I wasn't Hispanic. But that's how Democrat views it. That's how the radicals in the civil rights division view it. And I will point out as an example, this committee, one federal district judge in the state of Texas, Jason Pulliam, is an African-American judge nominated by President Trump, sat at this table, presented superbly. The Democrats had no criticism, and every single Democrat on this committee voted against him. Why? Because they perceived him as a black Republican. He didn't qualify as a black man. And I actually asked, as the Democrats were voting against Judge Pulliam, do you have one basis to vote against him? Anything you disagree with? None of them had any single answer at all. This hearing's about one thing. It's about power, and it's about ensuring Democrats stay in power. That's cynical, and it's at the expense of democracy and the right of voters to express their will through free and fair elections.
Cruz cut straight through the nonsense. He asked, when I go to the polls, I show my ID, I cast my vote. What's racist about that? And guess what? They couldn't answer. Because there is nothing racist about proving you are who you say you are before voting. That's called basic election security. The Democrat so-called experts admitted it themselves. They had to fall back on talking about intent and design instead of real-world results. That's how you know their argument is weak. And then came the knockout punch. Cruz dropped the facts. 35 states already have voter ID laws. 81% of Americans support them. And here's the kicker. 77% of Black Americans support voter ID. So let me ask you this. If 77% of Black voters support voter ID, how can the Democrats keep calling it racist? The truth is they can't. They're lying. Plain and simple. And here's what Cruz exposed next, the ugly hypocrisy of the left. Democrats scream that Georgia and Mississippi are racist, yet those states have higher Black voter registration and turnout than liberal strongholds like Connecticut. Let that sink in. In fact, in Georgia and Mississippi, Black voter turnout is higher than white turnout. So where's the suppression? Where's the racism? It doesn't exist. But the Democrats don't care about facts. They care about power. And if they have to weaponize race and lie to keep that power, they will. Let's be real here. This hearing wasn't about racism. It wasn't about protecting minorities. It was about Democrats trying to hold on to power by keeping elections loose and vulnerable. Because when elections are secure, when every legal vote is counted once, the radical left loses its grip. They don't want election integrity. They want chaos. They want loopholes. They want control. And that's why patriots like Ted Cruz fight. He stood up in that hearing with facts, with numbers, with truth, and he demolished the hollow arguments of the left. We, as Americans, need to do the same. Don't let anyone tell you showing an ID to vote is racist. It's not. It's patriotic. It's common sense. Because here's the bottom line. One legal citizen, one legal vote. Anything less is an insult to our democracy. So, patriots, I'll leave you with this. Protecting the ballot box is not an act of racism. It's an act of respect for every single American voter. Don't let the radical left shame you into silence. Share this video. Talk to your neighbors. Push back when someone throws around the word racist without facts, because our democracy depends on it. Senator Cruz showed what courage looks like. Now it's our turn to stand firm. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.